Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Seminoles Sidelines here, presented by the Osceola. We've got a special guest. I'm Ariya Massoudi alongside one of my bosses, one of my friends, all-around great guy, and the voice of the Noles, Jeff Culhane. Jeff, thanks for joining us for a couple of minutes.
Ariya, great to talk with you. Enjoying this Florida summer sunshine right now and getting out, playing a little golf, and gearing up for what's going to be another exciting year for the Noles here this upcoming fall, and another exciting athletics year around the corner. It will be here before we know it, starting all over again with another season. I can't wait.
And you guys can find this on Apple, on Spotify, and everywhere else you get your favorite pods. Those of you watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, we appreciate you. Interact with us. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as floridastate.rivals.com. The Osceola working hard this summer, getting you up to date. As Jeff said, the Noles are getting back into the groove of things. Jeff, before we talk ball, let's talk some golf real quick, because I want to know, how does playing in this Florida heat compare to playing in Fargo in the summers?
Yeah, a little more humid, right? A little more humid, but I'm enjoying it. You embrace that kind of hot weather this time of year, getting outside, getting a nice sweat on. And man, there's some unbelievable courses here in Tallahassee and around the state of Florida as well that I've been fortunate enough to play. And I like to play. I'm not, I wouldn't put my skill set up there with anyone that's going to, go low as far as scoring it. But I like to play. I play well enough to keep people on their toes, and if we got a game going. And so, for a guy that's getting older, and I can't really consider myself much of an athlete anymore, that's really one of the main ways I get to go out and compete. And so it's fun for me, and also a nice way to kind of, disconnect and decompress a little bit. And if I hit a bad shot, I just have to tell myself, you don't practice, you don't do anything to help make yourself better. There's no reason to get upset, which I'm sure all of us golfers try to tell ourselves, and still get upset anyway. But it's been a fun first year here in Tallahassee, and man, I tell you, it's exciting to see what's coming around the bend as well.
And the beer's always cold in the clubhouse, man. Don't worry.
Always.
That is always waiting on you, whether you play well or you play poorly. Jeff, as we look towards this new coming year, and we'll talk about Mike Norvell and what Florida State's expectations are. I joked with you last year that the credit has to be given to you. As soon as you join, we get good. You know what? If you want to take it, you're more than welcome to have it, or given it. And so a 10-win season, what was that like for you? Obviously, coming from North Dakota State and a powerhouse FCS program, right? Like, they win every single year, or in the mix every year. You had to know coming in that, FSU football hadn't been at its peak in a few years. And there was optimism, but no one really 100% saw it coming. To see 10 wins, to beat LSU. What was year one like for you, adjusting to a new play-by-play job professionally, but then to also be a part of what could be the resurgence of Florida State football?
Yeah, obviously it was a very special fall for a lot of reasons for myself personally. Being able to be welcomed into the family of Florida State athletics, the Seminole family, everybody, being so great and inviting and supportive when they really didn't have to before, things got going. And, for my personal journey, it was certainly a year where you have to earn the trust of a lot of people. And I took that very seriously. And, a huge part of it, Ariya, was, working with the people I get a chance to work with, people like yourself, everybody on our football broadcast crew with William Barnett, Floyd, Tom Block, Andy Surratt, Chris Culp, our general manager at Seminole Sports Properties, Caleb Swan, and then, the entire staff at Florida State, everyone welcoming me in, making me feel like family. It really allowed me to be me. And that was comforting. It really helped me, go about my business and just relax and be me and do my job. And that maybe sounds simple and like it should just happen, but it's not how it always works in this business. And luckily for me, it worked out. And as far as the play on the field is concerned, when you have a guy like Mike Norvell leading the charge and then have the coaches that he has in place underneath of him, you could sense or at least I could, you could sense very early on at practices that the culture was being instilled, and this group just needed some positivity. They just needed to have some things go their way. It's been well documented the last 6-7 years. The breaks hadn't gone our way here at Florida State, right? And so you just needed to have, I think, one of those games like LSU where, even though I felt like we were the better team throughout in that setting, we still needed some breaks, right? We still needed the block on the Bayou, the great play by Shaheem Brown to happen. And that was a play that propelled this group to the great start, 4-0. You kind of hit that middle patch with the 3 games with Wake Forest, NC State, and Clemson, which I think were more, as much as they were physical challenges, I think those were still mental challenges and hurdles to overcome for this football team. I think they learned some things about themselves. And then obviously the finish to the year was as good as anyone around the country, right? With the way this team went out and won 6 in a row to end the season, 35 points or more in every single game. So it was truly a great season in a lot of different ways. Obviously a dream come true for me to replace the legend that is Gene Deckerhoff, and also great to get to know Gene and his family and Ann and the entire Deckerhoff clan, who also welcomed me with open arms here at Tallahassee. So an amazing first year, and got some special things coming here in 2023. I have no doubt.
Yeah, and I think everyone's as excited as they've been. And I remember talking to you about when you first got here. I said, when they get good here, watch out. It's going to be a lot like when you were time at Nebraska, and it's like the whole state is invested in that football program and those athletics. And you're here at a great time, Jeff. And I don't think anyone, as a broadcaster myself, that is a dream moment to have the LSU game come down to something like that. And you got it in game 1. There's no way you could have prepared yourself ahead of time to be in that moment. So as a broadcaster, what were you trying to do in those final 2 minutes as you saw Florida State LSU in an ACC SEC game coming down to the wire and ultimately ending? And I think what you can tell me if I'm wrong was probably one of the calls of your career to date.
Yeah, certainly as far as scale goes, it's right up there, if not the biggest. And we got it early on, right? Which also, I think helped with trying to become as ingrained as you possibly can, as quickly as you possibly can with this Florida State family. That's a big moment that you want to be able to capture and represent the Florida State football program in its proper way. And, that was a special night. Obviously, that was a special game and a special weekend. Noles fans, Garden and Gold was all over the French Quarter, took over Bourbon Street, took over New Orleans. You expect it to be an LSU heavy crowd, and it wasn't that. I mean, it's 50-50 across the board, that night at the Superdome. And, what was I trying to do? I was just, honestly, I was telling myself, Ariya, just be ready. Just be ready for anything. You never know. I mean, shoot, we had what it felt like it was a stranglehold on that game, and then the turnover. And from that point on, when that play happened, in my mind as a broadcaster, it's just, all right, let's just see what happens here and don't assume this game is over. Yes, I'm thinking they've got, LSU's got to go 99 yards. The way they've been playing offensively tonight, doesn't feel like it's going to happen. But you just never know. And so just be ready to go, call the action. We had the goofy, is he inbounds? Is he out of bounds? 1 second ruling that took forever. And I think it really caught a lot of people off guard, including the officiating crew that night and the replay review booth as well, in a lot of respects with how that played out. And, and when the extra point took place, as I'm getting ready to call the play, I'm setting it up, and the same message in my mind is just, you never know. Just be ready. Don't assume he's going to make it. It's college football. It's 18 to 23, now sometimes 24-year-old young men with the extra year and transfer portal and all that good stuff with roster management. Just be ready to go. Could be a bad snap, could be a bad hold. Who the heck knows? And we got the block. And I felt like, we were on it. We did a good job of capturing that moment. And, what a special night it was for Florida State football and so many people.
As that year went on, too, it felt like this team gained confidence. Yeah, they had that 3-game losing streak against quality opponents, right? And Wake ends up being this experienced team that has a nice season again under Clawson. NC State's it's just something about Carter Finley, man. Whenever we play them there, they find a way. And sometimes they don't find a way. It's the football gods that find a way for them to get a W. And Clemson has kind of been that thorn in our side and the measuring stick for the ACC, really kind of a role reversal. Florida State used to be that, and Clemson was trying to play catch up to the Noles. And so you get these anticipated games coming back next year. And I do feel like those 3 games help this team, I think, build something mentally, right? The physical part of it, you can work on that in the offseason with Coach Storms in the training room. Add some in the transfer portal with the recruiting class as well, too. But the mental part of it, and Norvell says this all the time, right? Mike has always said, you have to experience that so that you know how to respond to that. How confident are you that last year's trials, they ended up going on a win streak to finish the year and get their 10, but how confident are you that those lessons learned will aid them as they move into 23? And it seems like the goals have jumped another peg with this fan base in the program.
Yeah, there's no question. And I would throw a game that we forget about that I think was just as important in a lot of ways as LSU was, and that was the very next game at Louisville on a Friday night to open up ACC play on the road. Ton of adversity in that game, and we don't talk about that game enough. You're on the road. It's a sold-out crowd, and it's early in the year, and Louisville's got Malik Cunningham. They've got athleticism. They've got a feisty defense, and it's a game where you'll lose Jordan Travis. You'll lose Jared Verse. It felt like everybody along your defensive line got hurt. I think Robert Scott got hurt in that game. That was a tough one. And this team found a way to win. And I think, to answer your question, the confidence level has to be high going into this next season to navigate, again, a very difficult schedule in a lot of ways. And you have to go through some things before you can accomplish some big things, as Mike Norvell has talked about and as you alluded to just a moment ago. And, I think those 3 games, the Wake Forest week was such a bizarre week with Hurricane Ian. And were we going to play the game? Were we going to move the game? Dave Clawson had his comments about whether or not we should play. And then, the NC State game, that was really, really hard. That was a game Florida State certainly should have won and didn't go the way that you thought it was going to go for about 2.5, 3 quarters or so. And then, Clemson is trying to do more of a mental escapade, I feel like. Obviously, they're extremely talented. Don't get me wrong. Like, that's not what I'm not saying they're not good. They're very, very good. But those were 3 games I felt like mentally this team had not had a lot of success against Wake, NC State, or Clemson in recent memory. And I think coming out of all those games, you learn some things about yourselves. And I think this Florida State team definitely learned a lot about themselves in the Clemson game, where they fell behind 34-14 and could have given up, could have waved the white flag. And yet here we are late in the game, and it's 34-28, and you have an onside kick and a chance to get the ball back in the last 60 seconds of that game, and could go in and win because this team didn't give up and kept playing. And Jordan Travis and company kept fighting that night at Doak. And so very confident. This team closed the year extremely impressive fashion overall. And you return so many great players. I mean, Mike Norvell has mentioned many times where, Jamie Robinson gets drafted by the Carolina Panthers, and that's our lone guy that gets selected. Well, that's a good thing. You don't hear many head coaches say it's a good thing when you see that happen for your program, because 7 or 8 guys that could have been drafted came back and are going to play in the Garnet and Gold this year. So very confident. It's not going to be easy. LSU is going to be as tough as it gets again. Going to Clemson is going to be a huge battle. And I feel like there are games outside of those, obviously, as well. You got Miami and Florida, 2 of the last 3 games at the end of the year. They're going to be very tough. After what Florida State did to both last year, especially Miami. And I think you're going to laugh at me, but I think Duke is going to be a tough one. I think Duke is getting better. And I think going to Wake and going to Pitt back-to-back weeks will have their own challenges as well. So it's not going to be smooth sailing, and never is when you're trying to reach high expectations like this team is going to do. But confident that they've dealt with some of this adversity to help set themselves up to deal with it again and learn from it to go out and ultimately win those games that they lost a year ago.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Wake's been, again, like you said, another one of those teams that for whatever reason we've had trouble knocking off, and especially there at Winston-Salem. And that's a tough place to play. Pitt's sneaky, right? Like that's a sneaky game against a team that's good at home and has been good at home for a while. And then Boston College, there's something about at Boston College as well. They'll do their red bandana game like they do every time they play Florida State up there. There will be some extra emotion. I do like that we don't have to play Boston College in the biting cold later in the season. You get them earlier. Temps should be a little bit milder, and so that's always a good thing. But Jeff, as we look at this season and we look at the personnel, offensively we're loaded. You look everywhere, and there's talent and guys who project to probably be NFL players, right? And who are going to play on Sundays. On the defense, you've got star power, especially on the D-line. What unit has you most confident right now as we move into the last few weeks of summer and we get into some fall ball and getting ready for the 23 season?
Well, the easy answer is you have to have elite level quarterback play, and what strides Jordan Travis has made during his time in Tallahassee. He has been given the keys to this offense prior to the 2022 season. He took it in stride and ran with it, and had one of the great years and one of the great finishes of any Florida State football player, any quarterback statistically in a season ever in Florida State football history, right? So it starts there. You have to have I don't care if you're playing high school or the NFL, you have to have a quarterback that can make big plays. Obviously, Jordan has shown that he can do it with his arm. He obviously can do it with his legs. And I think he instilled some more confidence in himself with the way he threw the ball in big games, a season ago. You got to go. This is going to sound very cliche, Ariya, but you have to be able to dictate terms in the line of scrimmage. And this has been a key emphasis in recruiting, both in the transfer portal and certainly in development for Mike Norvell and both sides of the ball, the offensive and defensive lines. And I just saw a nugget earlier today that Phil Steele had accumulated at Florida State now. How about this? Going back to 2020 and 2021, who would have thought we'd say this? Has the most experienced offensive line as far as returning career starts in college football by a wide margin, with what they've done with the development of young players turning into upperclassmen and Robert Scott and Maurice Smith and Darius Washington and those young men, and the transfer portal. The infusion of these great players in the portal. Dimitri Emmanuel is back, and you bring back obviously Bless Harris off of injury, who was going to be the starting. He was the starting right tackle in game one and got hurt versus Duquesne in the opening game of the season a year ago. And then obviously the additions in the portal of guys like Casey Roddick and Keandre Jones and that crew. Is huge. Defensively now, you have obviously the star power with Jared Verse, Patrick Payton returning, Fabian Lovett is so darn good. But now you have talent and depth with the guys that are back in the portal, and the additions, Braden Fisk and Daryl Jackson and those guys, right? I mean, these guys are tremendous players that have played a lot of college football that are here now at Florida State, and they're ready to go. And so every great team I've been around, yes, you have to have the big flashy names, but you have to be able to run the football, protect the quarterback, and also play 8, 9, 10 guys without skipping a beat along the defensive line. We'll see how it shakes out, but it feels like that's the way it looks right now for this group here in the offseason. They'll have to go out and challenge themselves and execute here during the year on the gridiron.
Spot on. I think the offensive line is an area that over the years for Florida State has been lacking in that depth and in that talent and sometimes in experience. And this is as good as it's looked with in terms of number of guys you can run out there and feel comfortable. Is there a player for you, whether offensively or defensively, that you think maybe is flying under the radar as we move into fall camp and you feel like is on the verge of really becoming a household name?
Well, look, I'll give you two that haven't played it down at Florida State yet. And I think Jaheim Bell in this offense, the way Mike Norvell likes to utilize the tight end, and I think Jaheim is more than a tight end. He's a Swiss Army knife. What a career he had playing with Tate Rodemaker, Valdosta High, and then you go to the SEC. You're obviously you have an elite level type of individual skill set, and South Carolina utilized him in so many different ways. He's going to line up all over the field. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how he fits in with this offense and how Mike Norvell likes to get creative with those guys with that type of level skill set. And so I think Jaheim Bell is one of those guys. And, the next guy, I'm not sure what his availability is going to be. Obviously, he practiced in the spring coming off of the being involved in a car accident a year ago, last May. I think Winston Wright is a scary, dynamic player. Again, how does his physical health fit in overall over a full football season coming out of a really, really tough situation, right? I think Winston Wright has a chance to be a dynamic player. Again, if his health allows him to be with what he can do physically. He's a game changer in special teams and in the receiving core. And so those are two guys that haven't played it down yet for Florida State, Ariya, that I think offensively, again, all health considering, can really be key additions that we haven't talked about a ton yet here for this team.
Yeah, I like those. I think those are two guys that, if Wright is able to be fully himself again, it mitigates some of the losses that you had. And I know Micah Pittman moved on, but people forget Winston Wright was a baller at West Virginia before the injury. And so that gives you something we haven't really had either, right? Like in a while. And that's a bona fide true slot receiver that can kind of find creases and seams and be a third down guy that just finds a way to move the chains for you across the middle of the field. So I like those. Pat Payton's one on the defensive end that I'm very excited to watch. He showed flashes, and I think he's ready to kind of get in there and kind of show you what he can do. And maybe he's a future Sunday guy as well in an NFL draft pick. But Jeff, last question on football, and then we'll talk about basketball for a few minutes before we wrap. That LSU game this year, much like it was last year, anticipated very highly. Mm-hmm. This year, probably even more, not just because of the revenge factor that LSU wants, I'm sure, not because of the seasons that both teams ended up having, but because it feels like two teams who have legitimate aspirations of not just winning their conferences, but to get to a college football playoff. That this game is a measuring stick game right off the bat to kind of make a statement to the college football world that we're ready to be taken seriously. And that's both sides. Obviously, a great environment's expected in Orlando. How excited are you to kick it off with a surefire top 10 game between two programs who are so historically gifted and primed for big years?
Doesn't get much bigger in this one, right? I mean, this is going to be, again, like it was a year ago. I think it's going to be the best game of the opening weekend. A lot of the national pundits said last year's game was the best, non-conference game. It might have been the best game in the regular season in college football last year, to be quite honest with you, the way it went back and forth and played out. And so it's a ton on the line here. It goes a long way for both teams, as you talked about. The winner of this one is really going to put themselves at the start of the season in a great setting. It's the first game. There's a whole ton of football left to be played after this one, and so it doesn't make your season by any means. It will help. It'll help take it to where you want it to go, but you got to keep rolling over the next 2-3 months or so. And but I don't think it definitely it's going to break your season either if you lose it. It puts you in a spot where, okay, you don't have a ton of room for error, that's for sure. But it's going to be an exciting matchup. And, I think the last time I checked, LSU was a small favorite in this game. I find it interesting because if you go and look at it position by position and really look at it, look, quarterback, Jordan Travis, Jaden Daniels, I like our guy. You could say, okay, that's pretty close, right? With those two guys and their skill set and the way they play the game. Running back, I like Florida State. Wide receiver, everybody talks about LSU's wide receivers, and don't get me wrong, they are very, very talented. Malik Neighbors and company, but they also lost Kayshon Boutte and Jeray Jenkins to the NFL. And Florida State returns essentially everyone out. Pokey Wilson is in the National Football League, and Micah moved on. But Johnny Wilson, you add Keon Coleman, you bring the pieces back that you do. Florida State's wide receivers, I feel like, are in a good place. I like Florida State's offensive line with its experience returning. I know that LSU has Mason Taylor as a sophomore. I like Florida State's depth and versatility at tight end. You go to defense. Defensive line, LSU lost 3 guys to the NFL. Florida State returns everybody and adds. I like Florida State's defensive line. Linebacker, I think it's pretty similar. Harold Perkins is a name that we didn't have to deal with early in the season last year that we'll have to deal with this time around. He's an NFL guy already, I think, as a true sophomore. That'll be a guy potentially to watch out for, wearing number 4 this year at linebacker for LSU. In the secondary, I like our corners much better than I like LSU's. The safety room, pretty similar. So it's interesting to me that LSU's the favorite in this game, but I feel like Florida State, if you go position by position, has an advantage in 3 to 4 position groups overall. And so this is going to be a classic matchup early in the year. LSU will be ready. One of the big differences, obviously, is now they have a year under their belt under Brian Kelly and know what's expected, and they're going to be upset and ready to play. But Florida State goes into this game confident as well, Ariya, knowing they beat LSU, and they have, I would say, an advantage with the talent on their roster. That's just my opinion. And nevertheless, it's going to be a fascinating contest where the winner of this game certainly puts a feather in their cap for their resume for the rest of the year.
I like it. Just check off every single box, unit by unit. And I'll even add, Jeff, to aid your point about the receivers, if you want to add in tight ends, I'll take Jaheim Bell and Morlock over anything LSU is going to throw at you. And it's just this team for Florida State on paper, it's silly, right? Like the starting 11s on each side for FSU, it's as good as it gets. And that's why if you stay healthy, the Noles are being mentioned is a team that could beat Clemson maybe twice and get to a college football playoff. But LSU will present that first real challenge, and we're going to be excited, man. I'm so excited for you to get to call that game. And I know all the Seminole fans are going to pour into Orlando and get that thing kicked off, right?
Yeah.
Basketball-wise, let's transition a little bit into Coach Ham. Obviously, last year didn't go the way that they wanted. That was a little bit different from what Florida State fans have been used to in the hardwood, because Coach Ham, a Hall of Famer that I think should have the court named after him when it's all said and done, has just been so good at Florida State. So last year was weird. You could tell, talking to the staff, that they were a little shocked by the way it turned out. But I think they've gone into the portal and they've added some real pieces here, some experience and some ability to be able to get back to a type of team that the Noles will be proud of. What do you prognosticate for FSU as they move into 23 and 24?
Well, I think it's going to be great to have the opportunity to see this team healthy. Again, knock on wood there. This team is due a season of great health after the last 2 years, right? And so, what a lot of people don't talk about is I think a guy like Jalen Gainey is a heck of a player. The young man, we haven't seen him play yet. We haven't seen what he's capable of. I think he's a tremendous talent that fits Leonard Hamilton and Stan Jones's systems with what he does on both ends of the floor. But that's another, 6'10", 6'11", athletic body that can do a lot of things for you. And he's getting close to coming back off of the knee injury he suffered in September of a year ago. He would have factored in a big way last season. Cameron Fletcher is coming back. I think he provides a toughness to this team that when he was out, this team needed that during some tough stretches a year ago. And Baba Miller is going to be able to play the entire year. He's over right now playing in the FIBA U19 World Championships, World Cup, overseas and having success. I saw he scored, 14 points and shot the 3 well against France just the other day. So you get those 3 guys back and get Baba with your team being able to play to start the year. And I think you're already ahead of where you were obviously a season ago. And then, you add guys in the transfer portal that Coach Hamilton is very excited about, and Josh Nickelberry and Jameer Watkins, guys from the A-10. Nickelberry is the A-10 sixth man of the year out of LaSalle. He can really score it and shoot the three. Watkins, a guy from VCU who's a winner and knows how to do all the little things that to help propel a team, and he's a young, tough player. And then Primo Spears as well from Georgetown is another guard that can provide depth at that point guard spot and can get to spots on the floor and be able to create some things with the way he is able to penetrate and get some things done off the bounce, and helps you out defensively as well as a quicker player that provides problems, can be a little bit of a pest, if you will, in the backcourt. And guys coming back like Darren Green, who won't have to play 37 minutes a game anymore, be able to keep him fresh for later in the year. And I'm looking for Jalen Worley to take a big step forward. This is a young man who was heralded coming out of high school, and he's shown us flashes of that in his 2 years here at Florida State. Let's see him be that consistent player, be that flashy guy overall, and do it on a game-by-game basis. And so it's a group that has gone through some tough times. There's no question about it. But I tell you what, being around him a year ago and being around Leonard Hamilton, he is going to do whatever he needs to do to get this program back to where it was as a winner in the ACC and a team that's going to be in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and it felt like the injuries just mounted, right? And it was weird from the get-go. You lose Gainey, and Jeff, it felt like coming out of Canada when they went to the trip, optimism was extremely high. There was some confident talk coming in. Stan Jones and I were having a conversation, and he felt really good about the team. And then you lose Gainey, right, in practice. I think it was in October. Baba Miller, it comes down that he can't play for the first half of the year. And then Cam Fletcher, like you mentioned, was arguably your best player in the first half of the season, right, when fully healthy. He goes down, and it just felt like the wheels kind of fell off. And it's hard, right, when you're in the muck, so to speak. And that conference is not forgiving. Your schedule was not forgiving. It doesn't give you a chance to really feel good about yourself. This now feels like an opportunity for them to hit the reset button. You added new guys who have been through some wars. And a guy like a Chandler Jackson, could he emerge and be someone that kind of takes the reins? Him and Worley could end up providing you a really good backcourt there alongside Primo.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention Cam Corn. I mean, Cam Corn had a great freshman year, was really thrust into that, that role as the 4 and the 5, probably ahead of schedule. And he went through some growing pains, but also showed us that he can be one of the top players in the league overall, as far as top young players as a freshman, I should say. Overall, had some great games and some ACC Rookie of the Week honors for the young man that finished his career at Sunrise Christian Academy in Wichita, Kansas, one of the great prep programs in the country in high school basketball. But as we talked about, Ariya, with football needing the breaks to go their way early in the season last year, that's what basketball needs right now. These guys have been beat down with bad news for the last year and a half, injuries and losing tough games and just not having the success they're capable of having, to be quite frank. And so this group needs to win games early in the season, stay healthy, get some good luck, and have some good breaks for a change that they haven't had in quite some time. You get that and get some positive momentum, some confidence. This team has the talent level and the pieces in place to – I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're going to go out and win 25 games next year, right? But they're here at Florida State for a reason. And, some things with roster management, I think, caught Coach Ham a little bit by surprise, as he's talked about with the portal. But I think he's on it now. He's got the right pieces in place, and guys are getting older. They just need some good mojo, I feel like. And once that happens, they're going to get them back on track and get them in a situation where they need to go from a wins-losses standpoint.
Yeah, and it does seem like this team is going to be a bit older too, right? And some of that's going to be coming from the portal. But some guys are just getting older. And when you add Gainey back into the mix, it seems like a good cohesive mix of young guys who have been through the battles. You're not going to have a big freshman class like you did last year. but also that veteran experience. And it seems like college basketball right now, Jeff, experience finds ways to win games, right? And that's just the name of the game. Get old and stay old, as the old mantra goes. But it does feel like, right, like this team is primed to have that bounce back year and make a real push to making the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. That's certainly the hope. And, to your point, the get old, stay old line, I think that was Mike Bray at Notre Dame that used that during his time with the Irish in South Bend. And you look at some of these teams. I mean, everybody with the portal is able to do that, to get old and literally stay old. And you look at, schools and teams like Pitt, NC State, Virginia Tech. Miami has done this in the transfer portal. Clemson has done this in the transfer portal. Some of the programs that you looked at in years past and thought, look, they've got some work to do. They've been able to flip the script in a year or a year and a half and find the right mix and bring the right players in that have played a ton of college basketball. And I know that's the focus for a lot of programs. And obviously with the capability of doing that right now, that's been the focus in a lot of ways for Leonard Hamilton and his staff as well in trying to keep this roster in a place of getting it back to where it is expected to be and certainly where it needs it to go to have a high level of success with Florida State basketball.
My hope for you, Jeff, is that you get to see what FSU hoops culture looks like. I mean, it was right before you got here at its peak, and fans cared. Students were pouring in an hour before the game. It really felt like a big-time basketball program, and I hope that that they're able to get back to it this year, because it is a lot of fun, especially when the ACC is involved and you got big game after big game coming to the Tuck. It's a special environment. So hopefully in year 2, you bring that good mojo with you like you did in year 1 for football. But as we move into this new athletic year, where can fans find you? What kind of projects are you guys working on? If there's anything you're not ready to give away yet, feel free to dance around it. But what are ways that the Noles can interact with Jeff Culhane and Learfield as we move into
thank you for that, Ariya. The Behind the Mic podcast is obviously one that's been a lot of fun this last year. We had 80 episodes a year ago with everything that we wanted to do and talking about the success stories of Florida State athletics. And so that will return with the fall sports season coming up here in August. And so expect to see that, a couple of times per week, which is a whole lot of fun. And just check us out online, Seminoles.com. You're going to see a lot of, on-camera conversations following football practice with our guys. You're going to see a lot of conversations with the coaches and administration. We have a monthly sit-down with Michael Alford, briefing everybody on all things that are going on around Florida State athletics. So take a look. And we do have a new website. That's right. It's going to be a fresher look coming up with Sidearm Sports. And so I'm excited about the look of that at Seminoles.com for our fans to see and be able to navigate maybe a little more smoothly here in the near future.
It should be a lot of fun, right? It's never been a better time to be a Nole. The women's sports are killing it. How about softball and what they were able to do? Hats off to them. Obviously, soccer and women's basketball doing what they do. But the Noles really are an everything school. And I think when football gets back to being primo top of the country, it's going to be a new age for FSU athletics. Jeff, you're here in an exciting time, and really appreciate you taking a few minutes to be on Seminole Sidelines, and you're welcome back anytime, my friend.
Always good talking to you, sir, and looking forward to hearing and seeing your work this upcoming year as well. Thanks for having me, and go Noles.
All right, man. Well, this has been Seminole Sidelines. Again, this will be available on Apple, on Spotify, if you want to hear it on demand. Those of you, again, watching on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, we do appreciate you. Interact with the show, and please subscribe to the Osceola.com and to our YouTube channel. Until we talk to you again, for Jeff Culhane, I'm Ariya Massoudi, and this has been Seminole Sidelines. Have a great day.